Hikaru Nakamura went with the English rat defense, which in my opinion is one of the most underrated chess opening options out there for the black side against the move of d4. And with the move d4, we're starting out with d6. And this is a very sound move, very strong option. With this move, we could go into the King's Indian defense, the Pirc defense, Czech Pirc defense, modern defense, Hippo defense. There's a lot of different things that you can get from this position depending on what your opponent plays and what you want to go into. For example, if you see the move of e4, yeah, you could play knight f6, and there you go. You are in a Pirc defense. You can go into a Czech Pirc or go into a mainline Pirc with a g6 idea. I've actually been working on a Pirc defense course, and I'm super excited to release that in the near future for those of you that are interested in a Pirc defense repertoire. But really with the move d6, the most common thing that we see is the move of c4. And again, if you see the move c4, you don't have to go into the English rat. You can go into a Hippo, for example. You could play knight f6 and go into a King's Indian. But I'm a big fan of e5 against the move of c4. And what most players do here, including Grandmaster Hamilton in this game, is take on e5 and take on d8. That's what most players go with. But I'm going to argue that black is simply better. Okay, now, if you're looking at what the computer says that black has a slight advantage. White definitely doesn't have an advantage here. And on top of that, on the practical side of things, I think if black knows how to play this out, white gets a very uncomfortable position where they're really just trying to hang on. They're trying to survive, and it's black that is creating weaknesses and going after them. Now, I gotta say, most of the time, if your opponent uses their queen to take yours, followed by you having to capture back with your king or a minor piece, most of the time that means you're in trouble. That means, usually this means we're in bad shape, but not here because of the fact that this pawn is on c4. It's not on c2. It's not on c2. Right? And by having this pawn on c4, d4 and b4 all of a sudden feel a lot weaker. I mean, if white ever pushes this e pawn to e3, d3 gets weak. If we ever see e4, d3 and d4 get weak. For example, let's say white wants to cover the square of b4 and they push to a3. Well, you don't have a pawn defending b3 anymore, guys. Weak squares are such a vital part of the game of chess, and I think that this opening helps us really identify weaknesses and know how to target them. On top of that, what I would add is that you often want to very quickly put pawns on c6 and f6. And the move order doesn't often matter, but the whole idea behind these moves is to neutralize the opponent's knight. So if we do see, for example, like in this game, knight to c3, we can play c6. Guys, this knight is neutralized. You simply can't come to our side of the board. We're also allowing a king c7 option, tucking away that king nicely and safely. And again, I mean, we're going to play f6 very quickly. So you can play knight f3 all you want, but from there, you don't have g5, you don't have e5, you don't have d4. And as black, we have very easy natural development, and there's really nothing that white could do about that. I mean, in the game here, we have bishop e6, the king tucking on c7, key idea there. The knight going to d7. And in the game here, we have bishop h3 from Grandmaster Hamilton. I mean, this is a good move. It is. Let's say white went with bishop to g2. What do we do here? Well, guys, we are in the middle game / end game phase. It's kind of like this weird middle moment where some players might argue, which stage of chess we're in. Everything's on the board still, except for one pawn apiece and the queens, which is a big deal. But I would say here, we want to play slow, intentional chess, every move, looking to just improve our position, take a little bit of space, and add a little bit of pressure. That is what the English rat is all about. For example, there's a number of moves you can make here. For example, h5, taking up some space. That's great. We could also play something like knight to h6 here. And if we see h3, for example, a5, taking some space, right? Taking some space there. This knight, it's neutralized. You can't check our king, unless, of course, you just want to give up your knight. If we see e3, for example, we're in position to play knight c5. We're in position to improve that knight. If white, let's say, brings the other knight out, let's play a4. Let's add pressure onto white's queenside. This pawn on c4 is a major target in this type of system. We got our bishop developed. We're putting pressure on that guy. I mean, taking there isn't going to be good for white in any stretch. If we see something like pawn to b4, we could play a3. a3 there, going, you know what? Hey, you want to take my knight? Cool. I'll throw in a check there. I'll capture back with the bishop. And this pawn on c4 is isolated and a major target. I mean, let's say white plays king b3, looking to guard it. Right? There's a number of things that we could do there. We could play knight f7 and knight d6, adding more tension. We could throw in a check right now. We could even play b5. There's a lot of options here. And I'm telling you guys, I highly recommend you consider trying out this system for black, because it can get you a lot of wins, and it's going to help you with the process of playing chess endgames well as learning how to put pressure against your opponent's weaknesses. I think a lot of players really focus on, you know, quick, easy traps to win the game in 10 moves, and that's all good. That can be fun. That can be quick. That can get you quick wins. But once you reach the higher levels of play, guys, you're not going to get those 5, 6, 7, 8 move wins anymore. At a certain point, that stops, and you got to learn how to chip away at your opponent's structure. And I mean, this system here for black does a great job of that. This king is on b3. This pawn is pinned. It's isolated. White can't give it support. And honestly, at the higher levels of play, this is just resignable for white. Returning to a3. Let's say white runs away with the bishop. Okay, we target this pawn. We're attacking that hanging pawn twice, as well as the pawn on c4. If you decide to push again, knight b4. Beautiful stuff. And in general, guys, if your opponent ever takes on c6 or f6, take back with the pawn. Okay, we don't want to take with the knight here and then give white all of this play with that knight. That's going to be terrible for us. Capture back with the pawn and keep this knight guessing. Now, of course, white here actually could play knight b5 with check. We're not going to take that because the rook would fall. But if you do see that, okay, cool. We move our king. We move our king. And we're still putting pressure on c4. And in general, guys, the moment this rook moves, the knight is going to be under pressure. So sure, the knight can get away with it at this very moment, but it's not a good home for that knight to stay on b5 forever by any stretch. And yeah, I mean, let's say white pushes this pawn because you can't really defend it. Cool. We capture it and we're up a pawn, and a2 is very weak. And yet again, we're just simply winning this position. So here, with all of the pressure that this bishop is able to put on c4, b3, a2, as we push these pawns aggressively, really looking to damage white's infrastructure on that side, it makes sense that white goes, you know what, instead of just putting a bishop on g2 where it's going to be staring at nothing, let me trade off. Let me offer a trade. And we can't avoid the trade here. I wish we could, but we can't, because of the fact that rook takes d7 check would come into play. So here we got to continue by capturing off that piece. And here with knight takes, there's a lot of different options. The engine seems to like the move of pawn to h5, giving black an edge here. Knight h6 is something that we're looking at now. From there, right, you can look at knight f5. You can still look at knight c5. White can't just put a pawn on b4 and stop that, because we got that covered. And even if they ever did, c4 would become weaker. So white here just really has an uphill battle ahead of them. Again, in the game here, knight takes h3, and we actually don't see h5 here from Hikaru. We instead see the move of knight h6. So instead of h5, we see knight h6. And with f3, here we got bishop to c5. Hikaru, very strong move, covering f2. The white knight would love to get into the action somehow, but this bishop just prevents that knight from doing anything good. We have king to c2, and now knight to f5, looking towards e3. Looking towards d4 as well, although, of course, knight to e3 with check and getting the exchange is our biggest threat at the moment. Okay, white stops that. Cool. We still have a check. The game continues with king to b1 and now a5. Black starting to take space. And, you know, the game, white ended up going with rook h to f1. I was curious about the move of e3. This is actually a really good move for white, but black's still better. Black's still better. Knight to f5. Right? I mean, if you want to kick us again, cool. You're kicking us back into the same spot that we were. I know that this pawn went 1-2 when we went right back, but this is actually good for us. I mean, this knight will never get kicked out by a pawn ever again. It's just straight up impossible. And if we see something like rook to d3, hey, bishop b4, right? Why not? I mean, Why not put a little bit of pressure on that knight? And ultimately, why not open up c5 for our knight on d7? Again, notice white's knights are terribly neutralized. Ours, not so much. We got a lot of activity. Even if white just doubles up on the d file, I think a lot of players could fall into this. Knight c5. We're winning. We're going to get your rook, unless, of course, you run away. And if you run away, then cool. Thanks for the knight. This is terrible. This is terrible for white, that is. So really, really fun stuff for us. Really solid play. I mean, again, in the game here, we have rook hf1, bishop to b4, adding pressure against that knight, guys. We're not trying to win this game in 5 moves. We're trying to improve our position, add more pressure, add more tension, create weaknesses. I mean, if this knight ran away, which white didn't do, we're talking about a GM here, knight takes e2. We're up a pawn. And because we're up a pawn, I talk about this in my Mastering Chess Endgames course, over 28 hours of content. If you're interested in that, you can go down below, but in the description below for that link. But yeah, I talk about that in the course. And in the course, I talk about the fact that, hey, if we're up a pawn, guys, most of the time we're winning. And we need to know how to convert that 1 pawn advantage effectively. Returning to bishop b4. White here goes with bishop to b2. At this point, you know what? Fine. We can't take on e2 immediately, but we do see white, white's knight fall off the board because we can remove the defender and then take on e2. And here we go. I mean, guys, I'm telling you, you might think you're doing okay here as white against Hikaru, and honestly, you are. I mean, you are doing okay. You're doing better than a lot of other players do, but you're still going to lose if you're down a pawn to Hikaru like this. He knows how to convert that 1 pawn into a win. Here we see the move of pawn to c5, which in a sense feels a little bit weakening to b5 and d5. Very weakening, actually, but white just can't target it very well. They don't have a knight on c3 anymore. This knight is all the way over on h3. Now, I personally would still be very careful about pushing this pawn to c5, but at this point in the game, because there's no knight on c3, we can get away with it. We have f4, rook f8, basically going, you know what, if you want to take on e5, I'm going to take back. And I'm going to match that energy on the f-file. That's exactly what we see. We have rook f to e1, and now knight d4. Knight g5 is played. I mean, e5 is protected. And at this point, there's, there's different things that we could try to go with. I was actually looking at this move of pawn to h6, which turns out to just be a terrible mistake because of the fact that sure, no. I mean, white can't play knight e6 check, but white could play bishop takes d4. And if we take that bishop, now white has knight e6. So white there trying to remove the defender and then throw in that little fork. And if we take the knight, white's going to take on e5, and there you go. White has gotten their material back, and I would actually argue white has the advantage here because we're the ones with double isolated pawns, and our pawn structure on the queen side is more advanced than white's is. So this is definitely not great for us. There's a number of things that we could do here. The engine really likes rook to f5. Notice if the knight takes on h7, I mean, that knight's just trapped. That's it. So that's a really good move. In the game here, we have rook f2. White here goes, fine, I'm going to snatch off that pawn on h7, but this is a big mistake. Hikaru here is not really giving a pawn away. He's just giving it away for a moment because of this move of rook to h8. The knight's got to run, and now we have 2 rooks doubled up on the 2nd rank. I mean, goodness, this is bad news for white. These rooks cannot be stopped. If white takes on d4, we can capture towards the center. We have 2 connected passed pawns right now, on top of us having connected rooks on the 2nd rank. And, yeah, I mean, in the game, we instead see bishop to c3. At this point, we have rook takes a2. The engine move here is actually knight c2, interestingly enough, going for the square of a3. And, yeah, I mean, white here's just losing. If you take on a5, boom, we block. We're still threatening knight a3. Let's say white goes, you know what, my rook's attacked. I'm gonna save it. Well, okay, knight a3 check is played. If you go to a1, the game is over immediately. If you go to c1, the game is over on the spot. So with bishop c3, knight c2 is the engine move, but rook takes a2 is the second best, and it's still completely winning. Knight e4 is played. We have knight takes b3. Guys, this is such a key concept. Because when you're looking, before we take on a2, I mean, this pawn chain in and of itself looks really strong. But the moment we take on a2, or white has to push this pawn, b3 becomes weak. And that's what we see here. Capturing on a2 happens, and now the b3 pawn falls off the board like candy. And I mean, look, rook f1 is played here. We have knight to d4. Talk about a strong knight. Rook f7. We have king c6. A little bit of dancing around here. White does take on g7. They're still down 2 pawns. We got 4 pawns. They got 2. We got rook a3 attacking the bishop. Here we have a check, and then rook d3 defending the bishop. And now we have rook b3 with check. Now, the best thing that white can do here is play king to a1. Even then, it's -7 for us. We instead see the move of king to c1. And there's a number of things that we could do here. If we didn't have a mate in 2, I would honestly look at a4. Guys, I know there's still a lot of stuff going on, but this king is cut off. I talk about this in the Chess Endgames course as well. This king is cut off in 2 directions. It's just not going to be able to get over right now and help against this passed pawn. I mean, this is just a astounding position for us. Of course, I mean, look, king c1 is played. We could push that. Instead, though, we have rook to c2 with check played. White can only play king d1, and rook b1 was seen on the board, and that was it. Great game by Hikaru there. And again, guys, I mean, with the move of d4, I would highly consider the move of d6. If you're a Pirc Defense player, for example, if you like the Pirc Defense, you're inviting that. You're inviting white to play e4. Your opponent might not be thinking about transpositional chess. They might just push in the center and then go, wait a second, I'm playing against the Pirc. I'm in an e4 opening. That's not good for your opponent with that lack of prep. If you see knight f3 or e4 and you're a hippo player, cool, you just continue with the hippo, for example. You continue with the modern, if you like the modern. You go into a king's Indian, potentially, based on what white does from that point. But with c4, the most common move, e5 is a great option for you. Very sound, very strong. A lot of players will take off that pawn on e5 and then take the queen. The moment they do this, you know that you got to get your pawns on c6 and f6 fast, and you're going to keep those pawns there for a very long time, if not forever, because they cover so many key squares that your opponent's knights would love to jump into. Your knights are going to be looking at spots like knight d7, knight c5, knight a6, knight b4, or knight c5, knight h6, knight f5, or to f7, d6. I mean, guys, those knights are dancing around, getting stuff done, and you have that ability to push pawns down on the queen side very quickly as well. Let me know what you thought of this video, of this game, and of this chess opening for black, which is very underplayed but performs very well. I'll see you in the next video. Peace. Wanted to give a big shout out to Walter, Steve, Rob, Roger, and Ray, and the rest of my Patreon community. If you haven't checked out the Patreon before, go check that out. There are some exclusive benefits that you gain by becoming a member. And I'll see y'all in the next video.